Man, it kinda sucks that we didn't get a Season 4 announcement of Overlord. I know Season 3 hasn't been perfect, but at the same time, I still do really love the Overlord anime, and I'm kinda sad to know that we didn't get an announcement for a continuation. I mean, at the end of the episode, before the ending song plays, it does say, "and the story goes on," which could imply that they might continue it in the future. They're just not giving a announcement for, a continuation. Like, a Season 4 announcement, like how My Hero Academia had its announcement. But even then, though, I'm kind of sad that this is the final episode for a while, even if we do get a Season 4. Let's get into the duel. The entire point of Ainz versus Gazef. Now, it's very obvious what Ainz wanted since the very beginning. He wanted Gazef to become his subordinate. That's what he wanted. He was like, hey, become my subordinate. And Gazef's like, no, I'm not going to become your subordinate because, I have loyalty to my king. I cannot just join sides with you and turn my back on someone that, has helped me for so long. I just cannot do that. It's not right. And then on top of that, if he was to turn his back on his king and then join Ainz, even if Ainz was a good man and gave him a good offer, it would make the king's power shift. It would make him look very weak, and would cause certain civilians behind Gazef to probably become turncoats as well. Because, see, a lot of the commoners in the kingdom really look up to Gazef, because he's like a commoner that really reached the top. He got really high up there thanks to just hard work and effort, and if he was to turn his back on royalty and the nobles and all of that, and join this new king and all that Ainz, it would make the commoners think, oh, let's follow, our hero, Gazef, and so they would become turncoats to, the royal family or the nobles, which that's not what Gazef wanted at all. It would cause a lot of conflict and issues between, the politics and stuff of the kingdom, so he never wanted to do that at all. Number 3, he was also someone that had an ego. He had this little bit of an ego to where he wanted just to see for himself how strong he was compared to Ainz. Like, he just really wanted to know the gap between him and someone that's pretty much at the top of strength. Like, could he ever be able to even touch this man? Could he do anything at all? And sadly, when he does die in this episode, he doesn't even really get to realize the gap in his strength. Since he technically got true death and he died like that, like he died instantly, he probably didn't have any time to really register, what really happened at all, and so he never really got to even see the gap in his strength in Ainz because it was just over so quickly, especially with the time stop, like the Zawanodo, all that. But, jokes aside, though, that's one of the reasons. He had an ego, and he just wanted to see how strong he was, which I think anyone at Gazef's position might have a little bit of that type of personality where you just want to know. You just want to know if you really are near the top, or are you just a bug amongst a god. Like, that's what you really want to see for yourself. The 4th reason is to gain information. It was pretty much information gathering for Gazef. Like, even if he died, the people that were watching Brain and Climb, they would relay the information that they saw to the kingdom and let them know how strong Ainz really is. Because Gazef's known a lot, and a lot of people know about his strength, how strong he is, and what he can actually do. And if someone like him is just destroyed like that instantly, and it appears like Ainz just teleported in front of him and then Gazef was dead, that's going to scare a lot of people. But at the same time, it'll allow people to really see the strength difference between Ainz and someone that was pretty much the peak of strength in the new world. And so this would allow many to probably figure out maybe some counters to Ainz, try to figure out how they could potentially fight him, understand a little bit more about his moveset. That's kind of what Gazef was wanting to do in the first place as well. He wanted Climb and Brain to see how strong he is. Besides the other stuff with ego and all that, it was mainly just wanting to show the difference. And for if they ever have to face Ainz, if they ever have to stand before this man and face him, they know what to expect. They know what they might need to do to be able to even fight him. Obviously, the overwhelming difference in strength is astounding, and honestly, I highly doubt from what they briefly saw that they could probably find any counter plan to fight Ainz unless they find out about time magic to understanding what Ainz really is. But I mean, until then, for the most part, there wasn't really a whole lot of information that was gained in that situation for Climb or Brain. The only thing that they got to see was that just Ainz' strength is just so overwhelming that probably no one in the New World really could stand up to him, let alone his army that he has at his beck and call. Now, another big reason, too, that why Gazef acted like he did was because he also wanted to protect the people. See, with his death, his sacrifice, going in, even knowing he was going to die against Ainz, he knew it. But even though he knew that, he also used his own life to be able to protect the citizens and protect the kingdom. See, with him laying down his life, it was sacrificing the few to save the many. And that's kind of what happened in that situation. Gazif is like, if my life can save the entire army, save the royalty, the royal family, the nobles, and all that, then my life is worth, putting down, sacrificing, and that'll be the end of it. And he would hope that if he did die, that it would kind of quell the anger of the nobles and royal family, where they won't bicker with each other, and they'll focus on the real problem, which is Ainz, Nazarick, instead of wanting to fight amongst themselves. He basically wanted to make it to, with his death, he wanted to unify the kingdom to where they could actually have one common goal against a strong opponent, which would be Ainz. Now, the reason why Gazif did not want to get resurrected is pretty simple. The reason why is because he believes that man, or people in general, should only have one life. It's a very interesting outlook, because in this type of world, resurrection magic is common knowledge. You could easily revive like that. Even in the New World Resonance, resurrection magic is still known. It's expensive probably, but it's still known and people can come back to life. So death isn't technically a permanent thing in the New World. However, Gazif still believes that if you die, you should be dead. It's over. Like, you have one chance, which is one of the reasons why Gazif has gotten so far and why he, really pushes himself, is because he always believed he had one life. He should never think he has another life. He wants to believe that when he's dead, he's dead. He's not getting back up again. And that's the big point here, is that he had this honor code too. Like, if he's done, don't resurrect him. He doesn't want to be back. Which, that is why Ainz used True Death. He used True Death in this episode to honor Gazif's wishes, because even if Gazif, didn't want to be resurrected, it wouldn't matter to him. He would have technically no rights if he was dead. If someone wanted to resurrect him, he would be resurrected. He couldn't stop it. He has no say in the matter if he wants to say yes or no to being resurrected. So, Ainz, using the magic he did of True Death, potentially makes it to where Gazif can never come back, because nobody in the New World, from what we have seen, really has that level of strength to even counter an ability like True Death that Ainz has, because to be able to resurrect Gazif, you have to have like a 9th tier magic spell, which is called True Resurrection. So if you don't have a 9th tier spell like that, or some form of talent, then you're never going to be able to resurrect Gazif. So technically, his death is permanent in this world. He will not come back, unless Ainz, or someone a part of Nazarick, or some very strong foe that we do not know about, comes up and resurrects him. So yeah, that's the point of that. Now anyways, let's talk about the duel in general, the message behind it in this PvP situation, like, Ainz and Gazif, going at each other. So even though it was a very quick fight, there was a lot of meaning behind it, besides just Gazif's motives and what he wanted to accomplish. Ainz also, in turn, had a lot of respect he was giving Gazif in that moment, because when you look at Ainz as a character, yes, he can be cruel. Yes, he can be an awful person. Last episode is a great example of that. But at the same time, he does show a lot of respect to people that he does care about. If he cares about you, or he respects you, he will show you a lot of respect. And that's what he did to Gazif in that moment. Even though Gazif technically is like a bug on the side of the road compared to Ainz, he still showed respect to Gazif, because Gazif was a good man. He was someone that really just, shined brightly in front of Ainz when he first met him back in Season 1, and he just has always had respect for him, and Gazif has had respect for Ainz as well. And so, in turn, when they were doing the duel, Ainz was willing to cooperate with Gazif's, demands, what he wanted in this PvP situation. For instance, whoever dies, there will no be looting. For instance, the loot stays with the original owner, and so you would never be able to take their goods or items or whatever. It stays with them. And then on top of that, honor the wishes of like a real 1v1, and then Ainz also backing up 5 meters away from Gazif, having kind of like a little distance. It was also a good amount of respect that he showed Gazif, because it's something that people in the old world, in the game, would do. When you were setting up a PvP situation and you're fighting someone, you would have to have, like, let's say 5 meters between each other, because it would mean that you're not close enough to get slashed by, let's say, a warrior, but you're not far enough to be able to just cast spells in peace for the warrior can't attack you. So with the little slight distance, it would make, like, someone like a magic caster have to run away, while a warrior would still have to get a little bit closer to try to attack the magic caster, but it's still the magic caster could try to run away a little bit to be able to attack. So it was a sign of honor that Ainz did with the way he set up the duel. He was honoring Gazif and giving them the ultimate form of respect. Even though Gazif might not have realized that, or nobody might realize it, Ainz was doing the best in his abilities to offer a sign of like, you know what, I want this a balanced PvP duel, as balanced as I could potentially make it, which that is getting into the next thing I want to talk about. You have it where Ainz wants to see Gaziv's sword, and Gaziv obviously does hand the sword over, and Ainz looks at it. In normal circumstances, when you see something like this, you'd be very concerned that the individual is going to steal your weapon. That's what many of you probably are thinking. You know for a fact Brain and Climb are probably thinking that as well, and so obviously that's just a common thing to think about. But at the same time, it also showed how much they trust each other with the conditions of this duel. But the reason why Ainz wanted to check the sword in the first place was a couple of reasons. Number one, he wanted to check and see how good the sword is. For instance, you know how Ainz is. He's a collector. He loves magic weapons, abilities, and stuff like that. So obviously seeing a sword that's a very unique relic, a part of the kingdom, he wants to see it to see if it's something he might want to grab. And in this case, that's why he wanted to see it. But there was more to it than that. He also wanted to look at the abilities of it to see if it had the potential possibility of even damaging him in the first place. Because it's not really a PvP duel if you don't even have a chance of hurting your opponent. That's pretty much what Ainz is thinking about. He's like, there's no point in, you know, having this man fight me when literally there's just no chance of him winning. There's no risk at all to Ainz, and that's just not right in the first place. So, once again, this goes along with the sign of respect that Ainz was giving Gaziv the entire time. And so, if Ainz didn't, you know, have, like, the sword pointed at him, if Gaziv didn't have that sword, Ainz was probably going to have to turn off his resistance of, like, certain weapons before Gaziv could actually damage him. That's what Ainz was thinking about and why he requested a sword, just to see if it was a potential possibility if he needed something like that done or not. So yeah, that's the entire point of the duel. It's very interesting depiction on how Ainz really is, because Ainz, he's an expert in PvP. The entire guild of Nazarick and all that, you know, the entire guild from the original game, they were PvPers. They constantly PvP'd. And obviously, Ainz and his old crew, they have a lot of experience at PvP. It's not something you can easily do against him. He's really well versed in that, and time magic is one of those things that's also a very PvP-like magic that can be very helpful, which let's get into that. So, to explain what the time magic was and why Ainz used it to also True Death and why it was called Delayed True Death, let me explain. In the original game, you had it where time magic could not be, like, used in succession with offensive abilities. So, for instance, let's say I was to use time magic, and then I have, let's say, a fireball. I couldn't cast a fireball while I put time magic down. It makes it to where you cannot attack at all. And so the only thing you really can do would be to, let's say, heal yourself, or add buffs to yourself, or stuff like that. That's the only thing you really can do in that moment when time magic is used. However, there was a workaround in the system, the battle system of the old world, and that was that when you use time magic, but then you added delays, like certain delays to magic abilities, that's when you can use the ability in quick succession after time magic. So the reason why he said delayed true death was because soon as the time magic disappeared, true death would happen. And now, it wasn't exactly like, oh, he could place it any time and then true death will instantly happen as soon as time ends. Ainz has to perfectly put it in sync with each other, time it properly to when the time magic ends and delay true death, you know, begins. So, like, for instance, let's say it takes 3 seconds for, you know, a delayed time magic to start, okay? For it to finally activate and kill someone. And then, you know, let's say time magic, you know, you can freeze someone for 10 seconds. That means you could not, let's say, use delayed true death at, like, let's say the first second of, you know, stopping time. You'd have to use it around, like, the 7th or 8th second to be able to use the ability properly in quick succession once time stops. So there's a lot of thinking going on with this PvP situation, how time magic is used, and how certain abilities, offensive abilities, are used alongside that. So Ainz did a really sneaky move. He did a very clean but sneaky move in a PvP situation, but normally you wouldn't be able to do something like that, because obviously in a PvP situation, people will be able to counter that. They'll know, like, you know, time magic, you need to be very weary of stuff like that, which that gets into the next point. Ainz, as a, you know, a player, he is someone that specializes in insta-death abilities and necromantic abilities, stuff that can resurrect or, you know, summon undead. He has stronger undead, and he also can just insta-kill people. That's pretty much what Ainz loves to specialize in. That's what his main abilities are. And so that, once again, goes to show why his abilities are so strong, or why he always has these signature abilities that just kill people instantly, is because that's what he likes to use. That's what his character was designed as, the build he wanted. Now, I guess let's move past that, and let's get into the final segment of Overlord. So, we have the situation where the city is given up. The city is given over, and Ainz now has control of Irantel and all that. And you gotta imagine from the citizen's perspective of how terrifying that would be. Because you're king, and the nobles literally turned their back on you and threw you to the wolves. That's what it looks like. It looks like they literally like, you know what? You all are probably going to die, but I'm throwing you to the wolves to save my own skin and save everybody else. So in that situation, you got to imagine how the women, the children, the men, all of them feel after, you know, finding out that their kingdom is no longer owned, or their town is no longer owned by the kingdom, but now by Nazarick itself. It's terrifying. And when you saw how Ainz was just marching in with the music, playing that very eerie music, it was very reminiscent of, you know, World of Warcraft when Arthas walked into his kingdom and, you know, he overthrew his father. You probably know the scene I'm talking about if you have ever played Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne, or Reign of Fire. You know what I'm talking about, but it was very similar to that to me personally, when he was just walking in and all that, and everybody was just to have this sense of dread, and they're like, oh my god. And then you see Doramomon pops up, and he tries to kind of make peace. He's like, I will not allow you to harm these citizens and put them down, kill them mercilessly or meaninglessly. I want you to be able to actually have a reason for what you're doing. And in this case, it was a ploy by Ainz himself. For instance, Momon is being used as like a cop, a police officer to maintain order within the city, because everybody already knows who Momon is. They respect him a lot. He's a great adventurer. However, we know the truth. Momon is actually Ainz itself, or sometimes is Pandora's actor. And because of that, people don't know that, but Ainz is able to use him in a way to allow, if there's any traitors that do pop up, like information, it's also given to Momon, and then Momon can actually give it to Ainz, give it to Albedo, you know, stuff like that. So, Ainz is effectively controlling who could potentially rebel against him. As long as Momon stays in public eye and people like him, then they'll feed information to him, and in turn, if there's a traitor, a dangerous person amongst that's, you know, talking to Momon that wants to attack Ainz, they can get rid of that person very quickly. So that's the whole setup here. But it was also to put people at ease, to let them know that Momon is someone that will work with Ainz because he wants to make sure nobody gets hurt in the kingdom. So that's the big point there. It was a good power play. It was pretty much all set up for this very moment. Like the first season when Momon's introduction to this very point, it was all that, just for that moment alone, to get the people on the side, to kind of, you know, work with it for the time being, not to have an open rebellion against Ainz and all die. You know, they want to make it to where people are satisfied and can be at ease until they finally integrate and understand what's really going on, and that maybe, you know, being ruled by Nazarick really isn't that bad to begin with. So yeah, I think that's pretty much about it. That's the end. So how do you guys feel about Overlord Season 3? Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? I mean, how do you honestly feel? I'm very curious. I personally really loved Overlord. I love seeing this, you know, animated. There was some flaws, obviously. There were certain things that disappointed me as a light novel reader, like the last episode and all that, but overall, it's still been very enjoyable, and the story is still very good, just like what I love from the light novels of Overlord, so personally, I can kind of look past it for the most part. But I love you guys. If you enjoy my content, you know, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like, and if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below, and with that, Chibi out.